All right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Diane Moon, and I'm the Public Education Coordinator here at Metro Louisville Solid Waste. And this is the last of our series for February 2021. And we're going to talk about backyard composting. If you have any questions, like Karen said, just use the chat or the Q&A feature, and we will answer them just as they come in. Well, let's begin. I know many of you recycle, and you have seen the Recycle Right webinar, and this graph might be familiar to you. We're going to use it real quick and talk about composting. I think about composting like recycling of organic waste. Organic waste is recycled into new usable parts. So when you think organic waste, you can certainly use this waste hierarchy: rethink, reduce, reuse, and then recycle or compost to make something new out of something that you thought was garbage. And that's what compost is. It's something that's been remade. But before we get going, because you know how we all love statistics, we're going to use some statistics here. In the US, each person makes about 4.5 pounds of waste a day. And out of that, 1/2 pound is food waste, which totals about 219 pounds per person per year of food waste. That's about $1,600 of produce that is thrown away, never eaten, into the garbage per family per year. 40% of all food is wasted. Some of it doesn't even reach a table before it's being wasted. But through composting, recycling, and reuse efforts, we help conserve landfill space and reduce the demand for raw materials. That way, that helps us to conserve our natural resources. In Jefferson County, we want to increase the diversion rate of solid waste that is sent to the local landfills from 49% to 90% by 2042. And Karen, what was that? 90% of?
Materials that are actually recoverable.
90% of materials that are actually recoverable. That's a rate of 7% every 5 years. And composting will actually help us reach that goal. Now, if you look at this graph, it shows the top 10 materials of Louisville single-family households. And the most material that is thrown away in the landfill is food waste. 36,000 tons of food waste go into the landfill every year. And it cannot be composted. It's gone to waste. All of the energy, all of the time, all of the work goes right into the landfill. But 26% of that food waste and other organic material can be diverted from the landfill. It can be composted instead. What we can do is food recovery. This graph shows, holy Toledo, this graph shows how food and other organic waste can be diverted and composted. This shows the way to save food from the landfill to reduce overproduction. 1 in 6 Americans go hungry every day. 80 billion pounds of food and all of those resources that went into growing and transporting it are thrown away each year. And how can you help? You can start planning meals. Only buy those items that you know that you're going to use. Be realistic. Only buy food that you know you will eat. Don't buy something like Taco Ticos from I don't know, from way down in Antarctica or somewhere, if it looks disgusting, you probably will not eat it, so do not buy it. Be creative. Use the parts of food you normally don't eat. Think about other things. Some of us have actually been very creative with some of the things in our pantries these past few months, I know. Freeze or preserve extra produce. Or you can always join an ugly produce grocery delivery. I joined Imperfect Foods, and let me tell you, I've never seen crazy carrots like I have gotten. Those things have been crazy. There's also, what's this one called? Let's see here. Oh, Misfit Market is another good one too. If you notice, they also have some snack things there as well, which is kind of nice. There is no waste in nature. Everything in nature is reused. We are the only animal that makes unusable waste or garbage. It's kind of upsetting if you think about it. We make garbage that is put into the earth to do nothing, just sit there. But what we can do, we can compost at home. And here are a few questions that you can ask yourself if you want to compost. If you look to the right, you'll notice that there's a wide selection of different types of composters. What kind of compost do you need? Well, there's a solar composter, which is that cone one. There's a composter that you can use in your house with worms. There's something called a bokashi system that uses enzymes. There's an open composter, a closed composter, a vermiculture. What kind of composter do you think you need? And you can base that on how much food waste do you make. I didn't think I made that much food waste, so I made myself a little worm tower. That wasn't enough. So I got the big old can of worm vermiculture. That still wasn't enough. So I got a composter, and I seem to be keeping pretty even just with those three things. What kind of space do you have? Do you have enough space for an open composter? Or maybe you only have enough space for a small countertop composter if you live in an apartment, something like that. If you're worried about pests, maybe the open composter isn't for you. Maybe a closed composter like the Earth Machine would be better. It might keep the pests out. Do you want a living composter like the can of worms, or a solar composter like the, what is that called, Karen? A cone composter? Is that what you said earlier?
Green cone, maybe?
Green cone composter, or even a biocomposter like the bokashi system. But first, let's start with a little science. What is composting? Composting is what happens when your food waste is decomposed. It takes yard waste and other organic material, and this is the process of rotting, decomposition. Microorganisms like bacteria, fungus, protozoas like amoeba break down dead things like food waste into smaller pieces called compost. And compost slowly releases nutrients into the soil for plants to grow. So the plants die, the microbes eat them, and it makes fertilizer. So that's the cycle. It's a wonderful thing. What good is compost to you, you might ask? It's just dirt, right? Well, compost is used to improve soil for crops and gardens. If you compost your food waste, you are making your own fertilizer for free. You've already paid for it. You might as well use it to the end. So how do you make compost? Let's see. There she goes. Well, I had some tools on hand, and out of those 4 tools, I was testing them when I first opened up my composter for the last couple of weeks when it was snowing. And if you look, I took the temperature This is the earth machine that we sell here at the waste district. And I took its temperature when I opened it up. It was a little bit more than 50 degrees, which really kind of surprised me. I was very surprised how warm it was at 50 degrees. Now, those microbes are working. That dark color actually really makes it very warm in there. Oh, when you get in there to dig around in your compost, make sure you wear some nice gloves because you don't know what could be in there. There could be pests in there or flies in there. Something could be in there, so it's always a good idea. This is one of the first tools I used. It's called a cultivation aerator. I decided I liked it the best because it could really get down there. Excuse me for hitting the little camera there. I apologize. I might make you a little seasick. But I really like that one. If you watch, I tried a little shovel. I actually had to almost get down in there to start moving things around, and I did not like that. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to buy anything. All of these things work. You don't have to buy anything extra. It's just what you like. This is a hoe. That was the worst. I hated the hoe. But like I said, it did work. It just didn't work the best for me. There was also a little rake, and it got stuck a couple of times. Now, all of that stuff that's in there, there are two classifications. There's green things and there's brown things. All of it is organic waste. The green things are like food waste and grass clippings, and the brown things are things like leaves, dried grass clippings, trimmings from your yard. Typically, you need twice as many browns as you do for your greens for your composter not to smell. If you look down there, there she goes. If you look down there, you notice that you could still see clumps of things. That compost is not ready. Here are the 4 items that I had. Let's see, all of that green stuff, plant-based, like fruits and veggies, leaves and grass, garden waste, shredded paper bags, newspaper, the eggshells, even rabbit poo and chicken poo is okay to put in your composter, but do not put dog poo or cat poo. This composter does not have the decomposing microbes to break down the pathogens found in dog and cat poo. So you cannot use those. You can put in some herbivore poo like rabbits or chickens, but not anything else. Now, the reason I was taking the temperature was because that composter is eventually going to have to be 140 or 170 degrees to where those microbes are really working hard to break down those that food waste. If you look, there's some plants in there. There's a lot of carrots. Man, I tell you what, those carrots are crazy. There's a lot of carrots, and I didn't chomp them up very much because I knew those microbes were really going to go after them once it got started. Those microbes need 30 days at 140 degrees to really get going. It needs it to be really warm to also start to stop that seed germination. If you see some of that garden waste in there, if there's any seeds in there, something might start growing that you don't want to grow in your compost. So it really needs to be really warm for at least 30 days. That's why it's in that bright sunshiny spot. Compost needs heat. There are 3 things you need for compost. You need, let's see, let me get it right. You need heat, water. Oh my gosh, Karen, I completely.
Oxygen, air.
Oxygen, thank you, there it is. Heat, water, and oxygen. Those are the 3 things. That's why you have to turn your compost. That's what I was standing there doing. You have to turn that compost. Now, in this backyard home composter, you cannot put meat, bones, or dairy or cooked food in your composter. it doesn't get hot enough long enough. So do not put meat bones. It will also start to smell, and it may attract pests that you don't want, like raccoons or possums. Okay. Also, I was smelling my compost and it didn't smell too bad in there. It should smell soil-like, have an earthy smell. You can see it's very dark in there. That stuff did break down all winter long, but it did take its time. It was very slow to break down. Let's see. Do you need a composter? Well, the city of Louisville is having a compost sale right now, and this is the website. You can purchase a composter and any accessories you might need, and we'll have them for pickup at our first pop-up drop-off of the year. It will be at the Sun Valley Ballfield Complex at 10401 Lower River Road from 10 to 2. And the pickup date is March 27th, so it's next month. So go ahead and order if you want this. Use this webinar to help you set up. And also, we'll have more information on how to set up your composter in just a minute. And let's see, I think that's it. Is that it, Karen? You can pick them up. Oh, I know what I wanted to say. You can also, if you're picking up your composter, you can also get rid of some recyclable stuff. You got an old couch? Bring your old couch while you're there. You got some extra medications that you want to get rid of, or need to shred some documents. We'll have shredders there. We'll have the sheriff there to pick up old medication. We'll have lots of things. So you can always go to, let's see, louisvilleky.gov, right? What?
Yes, I put the link to the store where you can purchase any of those compost materials in the chat for everyone. And the link to the pop-up is within that web store because it's telling you how to pick up the items.
Now, if you do decide to get an earth machine, this is how you put it together. It looks very complicated. It is not very complicated. It comes in 5 pieces, and that's with the Rottweiler. The best thing, it has tabs and slots. You got to get those tabs right in those slots, because if one clicks, you'll never get it apart again. Once they're clicked, you can't get it apart. So do you see that one tab sticking inside? It's going to get stuck. See, they all have to be lined up outside. And if you watch real careful, here I am, I'm going to go ahead in just a second and push it down, and it locks. Everything is in, the tabs are all in their slots, and here we go. Boom, it locked. Now the top is designed so that there's 2 arrows, and that means that you can open it. It's in the locked position, it's in the open position, which is really nice. It keeps pests away. It also has kind of a handy dandy little door that you can lift up and down in order to access the compost or look at it like I did earlier. That's kind of nice. And it has these really nice twisty spikes that go into the ground to hold the composter down. So that's super nice too. That way it won't shift around. And also our infamous Rottweiler, which I really, really like as well. When you get an earth machine, you get that Rottweiler, which is super nice. It's a really nice, handy thing to consult in case you have any questions. It talks all about scoop the poop, skin or peel is ideal. Where do I find carbon, things like that. So it's pretty handy. Let's see here. Now the thing about compost is, trying to remember. The thing about compost is you have to be very careful. A little bit goes a long way. You have to sprinkle just a little bit on your plants. It can burn baby plants very easily. Now, I want to talk to you about worm composting. This is my herd. I have a wild herd that lives outside, and I have a domestic herd that lives inside. So this is my wild herd. This is my worm tower I made for free. If you look, that was a baby worm right there. And this is the first time I opened it all season long. If you look, that was a grub that had lived all winter long in there, a fly grub that the birds, there's another one. The birds like to eat them, so I threw them out for the birds. It's not going to hurt the worms at all. They just make more grubs in there and they'll eat the worm food. But if you look, there's a worm, and they're hibernating right now. I was very surprised that they were so high up in the soil. I thought maybe they would have left because I haven't fed them. I was very scared that it would be too cold for me to open up. I do want you to notice at the thermometer, look at it go down. It was about 36 degrees, and there were still worms there. I was very impressed. I can't believe that they were able to survive that kind of temperature. Let's see. Now, the neatest thing about vermiculture or worm composting is that you can get compost in a week. Those guys, that's what I'm going to do here, is give them some snacks to feed on just in case they warm up enough to start feeding. Gave them some paper, some carrots, and that paper will help them to insulate as well. But that paper, if they were active, that should break down in a week. The problem is that they're not going to make a lot of compost. And the compost that they make is called, oh, did you see the big spider there? There's a big red spider. The compost that they're going to make are called worm castings. Now, I think this is better than compost because it will not burn plants. It will also be a pest repellent for your plants. You can also add water to it, and you can water your house plants with it and help them to grow. However, worm composting means you got to take care of the worms. Regular composting means all you have to do is drop the food in, the food waste in, give it a stir every once in a while, and you will get lovely, wonderful compost. There's a little bit of a work, how much more work you want to do. Now, not only do I have an outside worm tower, I also have an inside worm bin. And they are inside because it is too cold for them to be outside. They will sit on my porch in the summertime, but right now they're inside, and I give them lovely paper to eat. They've been overwintering there, so it is kind of cool down there, but it's not as cold as the big composter or the worm tower. Now, in the bottom of this is lovely worm castings, and a lot of the worms are down there. I had a lot of babies born over the winter, which is lovely, and they do not come out. Oh my gosh, they're so tiny, but they don't come out because they don't want to come out in the light. I have a hydrometer there, which also tests how wet things are, and do you see the little worm moving? And the pH. So it says it's about 60 degrees, which is fabulous for worms. They're not eating a lot quickly like they would in the summertime, but they are still eating. Let's see. Now, that's about all I know about composting at home. Like I said, these are my domestic worms because I keep them inside. And the other worms are the ones I pretty much just leave alone, and they seem to be doing okay. Outside, I do feed them every once in a while. Now, let's talk about backyard composting versus industrial composting. What's the difference? Well, size. Size is the difference. If you see this one guy has an earth machine, he's stirring his earth machine really nice. And if you look at that huge pile of compost, that compost will have no problem reaching 170 degrees, which means that those microbes will be able to break down things like animal waste, bones, meat, dairy, any of that stuff will be okay if it's a large composting system. Here's another one. That machine helps to turn the compost. It's very important to be able to turn compost. Remember, you got to get oxygen in there, water, oxygen, and heat. That's what you need to make compost. Now, Louisville Compost Co-op is a company that will come to your house and will take your compost, your food waste away. They give you a bucket, you put it in there. Every week they come in, give you a new bucket, they take it away and put it in compost. It's not quite as big as that picture, but it is bigger than the backyard, but not as big as this industrial compost system. All right. Did I talk too fast? I do have a bad habit of talking too fast.
No, that was great. I think it's really great to see video and hear experiences about from you and your worm bins and your compost bin. So I think I haven't received any questions or anything. So I would be curious if anyone on the line has already maybe already compost or is thinking about it and has any specific questions. I can also direct you to our website on louisvilleky.gov under, I know it's under yard waste. I can't remember if I made a shortened URL for it, but it does have kind of the basics of how to compost and kind of focusing on that idea of green materials versus brown materials. So the green is mostly your vegetable scraps, grass clippings, coffee grounds, and if you do have any chickens or rabbits or something, the animal manure. And then the brown materials are giving you the carbon that you need, and that's going to be your newspaper, cardboard, sawdust from untreated wood, straw or hay, eggshells, dried leaves. So I know I think there might be a question. When we mulched our leaves in the fall, I collected them into a container and I've been using them as brown. So when I bring my food scraps outside to the compost bin, I then scoop some of the mulch leaves onto it, and that that way I can go ahead and have that 2 parts of brown. Otherwise, I feel like in a household, it's a little bit easier to come up with your greens, and you kind of have to be ready with some brown material on the side, kind of waiting. Diane, we have a question. I had a worm bin indoors and it got fruit flies. Any ideas how to avoid that if I try again?
Yes, there absolutely is. There's something called neem oil, NEEM oil, that you can get on Amazon, and you can put it around the rim of the lid of your worm bin, and that will keep the fruit flies away. I wouldn't put it on, try to keep it not directly touching the dirt. They say it's not going to hurt them, but it keeps the flies away. It has its own particular little odor, but neem is a plant found in India, and they do use it in organic mosquito repellent. But what was I going to say? So neem oil. The other thing to do is I have found is that if you go in and stir it around almost daily, the flies don't have a chance to stay in there. Or like I did with that big grub, I just pick out the little grubs that are in there and just throw them to the birds. I know that's kind of a pain, but I've done that too. You can also put netting over the top of your bin to keep the fruit flies from coming through the teeny tiny air holes. You can do that as well. You just have to be very careful that air is circulating in your worm bin. Worms still have to have oxygen in order to survive. So if you seal it up too much, they won't have that oxygen, and it has to be able to circulate throughout the whole worm bin. So you can either use like a netting, a very fine netting to put over it. You can use the neem oil. Let's see. What else? I think that's about all I think I would use. Oh, go in there and just stir things around as well. And it's too much for the fruit flies. They don't like to be moved around or to be disturbed in any way.
And just so, since you mentioned fruit flies, it also made me think of another tip as far as backyard composting. When you are collecting your food scraps in your kitchen, sometimes you don't want to bring them out every night or something, and maybe you have a kitchen collector. In the summer, I keep that in the freezer because no matter if it has a lid or not, I tend to end up getting fruit flies in the kitchen. So I don't know, maybe it takes me too long to bring it out, but I do like to keep it in the freezer, and that cuts down on that.
And you know what, Karen, that's another thing. I got a countertop composter, and it does not fit in my freezer. I thought this thing was going to be fabulous. And it isn't. I spent a lot of money for nothing. It doesn't fit in my freezer. It doesn't have a handle, and it just is very bulky, and I really regret purchasing it. So really think about your collector, because it's going to be the closest thing to you. And I don't take it out every day either. Otherwise, it's too much.
Yeah, for a long time I used an old cookie dough tub, but just because I have family that know that I'm a nerd about it, they bought me a nice one for Christmas, so that's fine. But you don't really have to have anything fancy.
No, you don't have to have anything fancy. You can actually use a sweatshirt as a composter. You can use a black sweatshirt, so long as it's touching the ground, and those microbes can come up through your sweatshirt, so long as there's water, oxygen, and heat. And if you have a black sweatshirt, that heat is going to absorb through that sweatshirt, and you will get compost. I don't know how much and what, well, that would be an interesting experiment to do, but they sell compost bags that you just move the bag around to mix up the compost. I don't know how much compost you'll get out of that, but they say you can do it.
We had a question in the chat if paper counts as a brown material, and yes, it does. Newspaper, and you can shred. Diane in her video had shredded some paper, and that just kind of helps the process, especially for your worm bin. But even in the composter, you can go ahead and shred it up or make anything a little bit smaller just to speed up the process a little bit. Mm-hmm. I believe you could use any paper. Some people get concerned about toxins if you plan on putting it in your garden, but I believe that most things are printed these days. The inks are made of soy and things like that. So I don't personally have much of a concern for that, but it may be something to think about if you put it on a vegetable garden or something.
I've used from Amazon, it comes with that brown paper sometimes as packing. I've used some of that and put it in the compost. I had tissue paper. You saw some tissue paper in one of the videos. Put tissue paper in there.
I'll tear up my toilet paper and paper towel tubes.
That's
just make them a little smaller and throw them in. That's a good brown. Like I said, I find it hard to, you want the ratio to be right. If you have too many greens, a lot of times it does get kind of smelly. I was telling Diane, I kind of had to stop composting when everything froze outside because I couldn't stir it and could barely get the lid off anyway. But and during that time when I finally thawed and I went back out the other day, it seemed a little smelly to me, and I think it was because I had just kind of dumped and ran, didn't bother with the browns. So I had quite a bit of green material in there, so I went ahead and stirred in some more of those mulched leaves I had. But composting isn't really something that you can screw up.
It's going to happen no matter what.
Yeah, and it takes a lot of trial and error, or just trial and choose to do what is best for you. So,
and that's another thing is placement of where you put your composter. If you put it so far away, you're never going to put compost out there. You're never going to compost. It has to be close enough. It's a lot of little factors. The sun has to hit it for a long enough. It has to be close enough for you to do it. You have to stir it. You do have to take care of it a little bit, especially when the microbes are really starting to decompose. It does have to be watered, although we've had a lot of rain and a lot of snow. You know, like Karen said, you can't mess it up. But if you want product faster, you do.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever watered mine, but like I said, I have a lot of the green material has enough moisture in it.
Oh gosh, yes, that's right.
So
yeah. And I tested mine and it was just a little dry. It wasn't that dry. I was pretty impressed because like you, I hadn't stirred it and I've just been putting greens in there all winter long. Nitrogen, you know, there wasn't any good carbon coming in. So, but luckily mine's not that deep yet. I only had mine for just a few months, so it didn't really smell. I put whole pumpkins in there. And believe it or not, when I got in there, they were hollow. They were just like the shell of the pumpkin. So I guess those microbes got in there and ate the inside of the pumpkin out. It was pretty cool to bust those little pumpkin shells.
Does anybody else have any questions or even a comment we can share about maybe your experiences? We are excited to host the compost bin and rain barrel truckload sale again this year. This is not for profit. This is just a way for us to offer a discount because when you buy in bulk, you get a cheaper price. So we basically are buying in bulk and then allowing residents to purchase at that cheaper price. So there's, so we're not making any money to do it, just promoting it and trying to get more people to participate in a sustainable activity like composting and collecting rainwater. So we didn't focus on that as a teaching topic, but that's another thing. If you're into gardening, it's a really neat way to collect rainwater and then use on your garden.
I do like my rain barrels. They are super nice. I do enjoy it.
I have mine set up to reach two of my raised garden beds, so I can just pull the hose out and let it run on that in the summer, which is nice.
That is nice. Yeah, they hold, what is it, 90 gallons? Is it, I think it's 87, almost 90 gallons. They hold a lot. I did drain mine for the winter time so they wouldn't ice and then bust the spigot or anything like that. Did you drain yours?
I know I did one. I can't remember. I have two and I can't remember. I need to go look at them now that everything's thawed. Let's see. Is there a place to get mulch or leaves for a garden from Metro Waste? No. The only facility that you might be able to participate in something like that would be not through Metro, but through U of L's compost program. If I might be able to grab the website and put it in the chat there, but if you Google University of Louisville compost, they give all kinds of information, and they're partnering with that compost co-op that Diane mentioned, where they do offer a service, a little collection service for a fee. And I believe if you go on Sundays in the afternoon, they have it listed on the website. I'm not sure what has changed due to COVID, but they always met on Sundays where community members could come help volunteer and learn a little bit about what goes on there. And if you volunteer, you'd probably be able to also use some of that material.
There is a fee when you do the composting that gets picked up. There usually is a fee.
I think it's $20 a month.
$20 a month, which if you have a large family and you have a lot of compost and you don't have to deal with making your own compost, you will, make yourself feel better that it's actually being made into something and not going into the landfill. That's what recycling is all about. That's what composting is all about. Making something from something else and not just landfilling it, just using the resources that are not stopping their life cycle by going into the landfill. all that diversion. It just doesn't make any sense to put it in the landfill.
Mm-hmm.
Where it makes greenhouse gases. I forgot to mention greenhouse gases. It makes carbon dioxide, more carbon dioxide than you would imagine.
Mm-hmm. Yep, there's lots of good reasons to compost.
Good reasons. And some people think, well, compost makes carbon dioxide and methane, and it doesn't. It's negligible. There's no methane, and the carbon dioxide is very small. Anyway.
Well, I haven't seen any more questions come through, but we will definitely hang out a little bit longer in case anyone wants to put something else in there. But otherwise, thank you so much for attending this webinar. We may do another series in the next couple months, but this is the last one for our February series we had.
Karen needs vacation.
We have had a busy month, haven't we?
We have had a busy month.
Let's see.